From the castles of Tirasleen to the dark lands of Nakmar to the enchanted forests of the Wildwood and whatever waterfall Borman was taking a shower under, we'll get to that. Welcome back to Casterly Talk, the Willow discussions, here to discuss episode 5. We already said the words Wildwood, and that is the name of the episode, the location of the episode. So much happened here in this one, written by Hannah Friedman, directed by Philippa Lothorpe. I am once again Alden Diaz, as always, and I am joined today by one of the members of our party here, our questing group. Remember, you only get one cry per quest, Nicky. It's Nicky Kumar.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Welcome back, my friend. This one was so much character, so much fun. We immediately, both of us, just freaking out about all the beautiful character moments that happened here. And, you know, we love to talk about our deep themes and our analyses here and all of that stuff that we do on Casterly Talk across all the different fandoms. But I think the behind the curtain, not like it's some secret, but we are just so enamored with this cast. Like, the fun of this show, if you're not watching it, you're sleeping on chemistry.
Yeah, they're some of the most dynamic, fun, like dynamic young people I've seen like lead a show. It's insane. And yeah, like this whole episode, I think also felt like just a great time for them to feel young. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and to really explore like the lost side of love, and you know, because we have a few relationships kind of cooking in this episode, at least 3.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, it was just really kind of nice, even though it sort of started seeming like it was going to be a, you know, action-y breakout episode. It was actually the opposite. It was really like, yeah, it was very sort of like emotionally heavy, but not necessarily in bad ways. And I think my like initial reaction, having finished it, was like the James McAvoy gif where he's like fanning himself with the papers. So it's just like, man, that was a lot.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. It's a great one for just couples and for romance. It's got teen comedy elements. It's got drunken partying. It's got just deep
truth plums.
Like truth plums and truth bombs caused by those truth plums. Admissions of insecurity. I think the best comedy in the show so far. We mentioned it was written by Hannah Friedman, who's a co-producer on this show and is obviously, you know, in the writer's room doing the work, but was also co-writer on some of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So she's firmly in the Lucasfilm family, and I think that she has such a sense for the levity, but also the seriousness and the adventure, because it's the funniest episode, but it also is the most outwardly political in terms of just like thematically political, but also helping define the politics of whatever Willow's Earth is. I don't think we have, I don't think there's like a broad, it's not like Arda, you know, is Tolkien's world, or Planetos is Martin's world. I don't know what it's called. Maybe it was in the books or something, but this is finally like, oh no, some of your heroes were not that they were not heroes, but you know, some of your kingdoms were not all good. Some of your motivations were understandable. Some of your characters that were pretty one note in the original film, which is not a criticism, it's just, you know, people like Kale, who will come up here, are suddenly retroactively given so much depth. And we get some great new characters here. I'm giving a shout out, of course, to Scorpia, who I think will be a lot of people's new favorite. Scorpia and Borman is incredible chemistry, played by Adwa Aboa. We also had the return of Kevin Pollak as Rule, which is fantastic. And then we had Amelia Vitale as Ganoush, his daughter, sort of like a millennial brownie, which was hysterical. More parents and their children, and then this cast, just really getting to flex and show what they're made of. So let's start at the beginning, and then we can sort of work into this, because it's not a bottle episode, because by definition it can't be, because it's a wide open space, but it is, right? It's like one camp of people, but it does not a time jump, but it doesn't matter, like, sort of like how many days have gone by. You just get the idea that there's been a chase happening since we saw the Gales at the end of the
Yeah.
previous episode in Nockmar, and we just get thrust in immediately. It's pop music at the start of the episode, and it's what everyone on Twitter and social media has rightfully been saying is like they've shot what it feels like to play D&D. It's just it's an ambiguous maze-like structure.
Right.
It's Willow, like, he's got weapons we didn't know he had. It's just kids firing arrows, Ruby's firing them.
Yeah.
Everybody just flexing, and we take out 2 monsters. So how did you feel about that opening?
It also gave me Scooby-Doo energy.
Yes.
Like it's so cool. I think I started it at like, 2 a.m. and I think I texted you like very quickly. I was like, this opening is so this show. Like it's so amazing for them to know exactly who they are, like as a creative team, and like exactly the vibe, the tenor, the sort of adventure, but it's like it's fantasy, but it's modern, and it just plays with all of it so well. And it makes it like it turns it into this super just fun and endearing like cocktail of cool. And I think that to open the episode, we get the Bourbon's face like in art, and it's like not great. Like he looks pretty rattled, and then to jump right in, I think was really fun. And I think it pays off the fact that the Gales were right behind them at Nockmar. It pays that off like pretty well, pretty consistently. So yeah, it was just cool, and I love the little bits of character that are shown through action, right? Like they all have a moment, and Willow with his flamethrower and like blowing it out, and I forget. Kit was firing the bow and then just like threw it down. It was like get out of here. So yeah, it was just super cool. It's just good vibes.
Yeah, it just felt so, like you said, so truthful to what the show is, because throughout this episode, there are a couple things that, and I don't say this in a critical way, the show earns the right to just have a, of course, tone. Like you see Willow and Graydon are trapped or whatever, and then Willow just looks off to the side and he's like, oh, brownies. And it's like, yeah, of course. Like it just, things that maybe feel convenient, or things that maybe feel like you said, like sort of animated, like in that Scooby-Doo quality. Like Willow's backpack just happens to have a flamethrower in it. Like the rule just happens to live right there. Like things like that feel tonally consistent with the show. Whereas maybe if this was House of the Dragon or Rings of Power and somebody was out in the woods and they just happened to bump into another character, that might feel a little weird. But this is so aware, and it's also much like Star Wars. It opens with the idea that you're being told a story. So there's not a narrator, but there is a book. There is a book of this event of Willow.
This is chapter 5.
Yeah, we're watching, and so that is interesting. One thing I will note that we haven't talked about on the show before, just on a Lucasfilm fandom note, is that how fun is it to see the Lucasfilm logo with a musical tone over it, with a different thing.
It is cool. Yeah,
it definitely sets a, like, I wonder if Indy will have one.
Yeah, like, no, I'm like, that's one of the things that made me so excited about this show. Like, and with Indy coming out, it's like I love for Lucasfilm to be able to stretch, because it's like it's one thing to like, of course Star Wars, right? But it's like it's so fun for this, really this great, a great company, for this amazing place to
check just cash.
Right. I'll check my bank account. It's just great for this company to be able to do different things. It's fun. It's what was fun about when George had it and they were able to do Red Tails and Strange Magic, and
absolutely
just cause. And it's like we don't have to just be Star Wars. We can foster other stories as well, and who knows what the future of Indiana Jones is. And
it's a return to roots too, because it's like You know, before anyone actualies us in the comments, we know. Like, and it's the irony of Lucasfilm becoming the Star Wars company, is that it had two whole features before Star Wars. You know, you're not gonna sell THX to kids in the same way you can do Willow. And American Graffiti has aged questionably in certain regards, but still wholesome to the best of its ability. But it's like it makes it feel sort of fleshed out, puts you right in the tone. So from that logo to the book to this chase, it immediately makes you feel an adrenaline. It makes you feel all this energy. But like we've said, it makes you feel like it's going to be an action-packed episode. And it's not that it's without that, but I love that it takes all the energy and all the tension, and then it's like, okay, we're going to redirect that now into human problems. We're going to redirect that into romance, even some sexual themes, you know, because it's, you know, there are young couples, but there are also adult couples now with Borman and Scorpia, and into a lot of insecurity, into even some, like, Willow is directly now referred to it like, you're such a dad. Like they're embracing that even more now. So talking about sort of just the overview, you know, we're assuming if you're watching, hello, if you're listening, hello. But I would be surprised if you were coming in cold. But just to run it down, this episode changes the lore. Changes the lore. I sound like an angry YouTuber. It adds revelations.
But does it respect the fans?
Does it? You know, this one's not for the critics; it's for the fans. You know, it's going to change the hierarchy of the Willow universe. But much like how the previous episode gave Bavmorda an origin story, and that she wasn't always this way, and that she fell in line with the Crone and the Blood of the Six, we find out that Kale, General Kale, the Skull Mask General, was in fact the first of a people that we had already encountered briefly, the Bone Reavers. We saw them in the pilot, that he was the first of their kind, and that the reason why they are out roaming is that they're the survivors of 20 years prior at the battle in the third act of Willow the film, and that the only reason why they were her army in the first place is because she liberated the slaves of Galadorn in exchange for service. Galadorn was Eric's kingdom, which in Willow the film is painted as just this fallen kingdom of good guy rebels. Now you get the idea their hands were not clean, which to me links the film, the pilot, and now the present stuff so perfectly, because it was not a flaw, but it was a lingering question of, I thought Galadorn was cool, and then we met Graydon's father, and he sucks.
And then the
Willow had said,
you go ahead. Yeah, that was the point I was thinking.
Yeah, that Willow had mentioned. It's not that good a name anyway. So that Galadorn is like, well, I don't know about you guys, and they're making a play for the throne, as we know from Graydon's visions and stuff. So this entire picture of them has come together, and you know, we're here on Casterly Talk. We'll make a Game of Thrones connection. I had texted this to you. It's as if, you know, the Unsullied were freed by Daenerys, but instead of Daenerys, it was an evil witch. And it's like, we understand that, we empathize, and we understand Kale. You know, it's not like we can go back and give him pathos and give him new dialogue, but there's only so much you can do with a very brutal barbarian character. But the loyalty now is imbued with a lot of pain, and it changes Jade's entire origin. So that's sort of the rundown of what we're working with in terms of heavy stuff. Before I throw it to you to talk about all those revelations, I do want to note, I'm finding this out in real time. Kale, he was previously played by Pat Roach, who passed away in 2004. So rest in peace, sir, to Mr. Pat Roach. It's currently being played by Mark Slaughter, played him physically. He's uncredited. And I will give you one guess as to who was the voice of Kale in the Dark Side vision that Jade had. It's exactly who you think it should be. No, it was no, but that's really good. You were the wrong sibling. It was Sam Witwer.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So keeping it in the family. Yeah. Sam Witwer voiced Kale for that confrontation, and now that vision makes more sense. We'll talk about John Kasdan homaging his father with a certain drinking game later. But but Nikki's like, oh yes, we will dedicate an entire segment to that. But now we know that Jade was actively battling her father on a dark side vision, which sounds like a film that we've seen. So tell me how you felt about. Yeah, I think he, he might have done a pass. How did you feel about, much like in the movie, the lore dumps are a lot, like, but I think they handle them elegantly. Like, you're never like, wait, what, who? Like, it's the exposition is always very comic booky, where it's like, previously on Willow, if you didn't know, turn to page whatever, like it feels abrupt but not sloppy.
I think first of all, anybody who's been kind enough, gracious enough to listen to me yap about Willow on this show knows this is something that came into my life very recently. So
like a month ago.
Yeah, like if that. And so yeah, like for me, I'm also just interested in how this affects people who've been watching this for years and years and years, and this world they thought was this way is now this way. Like, I think that's pretty cool. Like, to me, it almost feels very original trilogy to prequel trilogy in terms of like, oh, the Jedi were this actually, like they were working with the Senate and politics, and like they weren't just this mystical knightly order or whatever. It kind of reminds me of how that sort of feels as an expansion of what's known. And yeah, I think in terms of just sort of dropping it and being like, well, here it is, I think this might have been again, I don't like say this like, well, they should have done this, like, but I think I expected Jade to like struggle with it more. Which maybe she still will, like,
right.
But I think that was the first time. Again, it's not like, well, that's wrong.
It breaks the show. No.
It was maybe the first time where it's like something went past and I looked back. Usually I don't.
Yeah. Was it a little bit like, it's you and I've talked off air about how pacing is a weird thing to bring up, but I feel like this is an instance where it's like, again, not to say we can do their jobs better, but like if there was like 5 minutes in the middle or a longer Scorpia conversation or something, but there's also the out, right, of like this forest is established to make you more open to things. Like Borman uses two funny examples of, you'll start officiating weddings or dog sitting for strangers you barely know. And so it's like, how much of their community is enhanced by magic, is opened up by magic. They're eating fruit that makes it impossible to not tell the truth. So there's things like that I wonder if it's like, when she's removed from the situation, she'll start to consider things more, because there are questions already raised, which I like, of when the quest is over, where will you go? And so I think that maybe it'll be like we'll hit it later. But we don't know. So I think your concern's valid, because it was sort of like, it's a great cut, right? It's a great directorial choice for Willow and Degraden to realize, like,
to walk into a party.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they just don't care about us. As Willow says, they don't mind us. That's great, but there is a little bit of are you more accepting? It sort of allows, I think, I was gonna say the reader, because of the book stuff, but it allows the viewer to make almost like an inference, like, talking about it with you now, like, is it because Valentine's dead that she longs for family, and maybe that's what's making her more easily accepting? Is it because is it the joy of realizing that her family wasn't slaughtered entirely?
I think that's probably part of it. It's such a key piece of her history is, I was the only one who survived. And to be told, like, we're sisters. I think that is a powerful emotion. And it's just interesting. It's like, it's so interesting. I just want to see more of that. Really, it's I hope it continues to play a role, because I think it's such a key piece of Jade's character to want to be the knight The gold. What's it? Is it the golden?
I think it's like
something?
the Shining Legion.
Shining Legion. That's her identity when we meet her, is to be this. I am the exception to be this.
Yeah, she'll be the first woman to ever be accepted, and to now be told that we don't know if it was the Shining Legion, but that some Tyroslean Rangers, that the strategy was raise them that way there can't be an uprising. Is like, yikes! Like, the colonization stuff that is there thematically is brutal. It's horrible,
right? And we do get the part later where she's like, why would Sorcha lie about it? But it's two kids trying to figure it out, like, the politics of kingdoms, right? And I think Kit is also in a place where, like, she doesn't want to probably straight up say, well, my mom screwed up,
and they also both have to face the fact that, like, something that has lingered over the Sorcha Willow rift is that Sorcha is the daughter of the villain. Like, Sorcha will always, so for her, decisions are painted by the fact that she's trying to avoid evil out of paranoia. And hiding is in her character, right? So now Kit is surrounded by two women that were hidden. Alora and Jade are now both, and again, this show's so self-aware that you can have a line like, my dad killed your dad, like things like that can be said, and it just plays.
Like, are you cool with that?
yeah. But it is interesting to see sort of how that all sort of comes together. And we've talked off air a little bit about the viewing experience and how it's like we want the whole world to love this show, but also its smallness is protecting it from some discourse maybe. And
I think so.
Imagine the small galaxy complaints of something like this, like,
right.
Oh, the two villains' kids were a couple, and now they're all here, and Rule lives here too, and but yeah, it knows, and that's the way it works.
And it's one of those things too, where it's like we wouldn't like suggest to devalue it in any way, where it's like, turn off your brain for Willow, like just don't ask questions for Willow. Like, that's not the point. Like, the point is, as you say, it's like it just knows who it is and knows who you can, knows it's the show that can be like, yeah, what about it? Like it's cool. I love that confidence it has in itself to do that. And even when it turns into things like, well, of course Jade is cool with this. Like, it might feel that way. And, maybe I noticed that and I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay, let's keep going. So like it maybe it's not always a successful trait, but it is admirable.
Yeah, it's a consistent one. They make that choice no matter what, and they make it with every character, and they allow the characters to make suboptimal decisions. And because so many of them have
That's key to any story.
It is
straight, right? Like dude, the way people talk about the way people talk about characters, where it's like, why'd you do that? It's like because we are living in a story, baby.
I can tell you, I make suboptimal decisions every day. Like, you ever order a double cheeseburger instead of just a burger? Like, that might be suboptimal.
You're in the drive-thru, you've already planned the order, you get in there, and then you're like, I just put the 6-piece nuggets into. That's life.
People are motivated by just doing things, and
that's why they're real. That's why they feel like our friends.
These people feel real.
Yeah,
these people feel real, and there's a lot of, I think, thematic stuff. We start with that Jade stuff and all that lore drop to say that what she's representing is, and what Scorpio represents in the Bone Reavers, is that, like, violence, the cycle's got to end sometime. Like, as Kit rightfully points out, they wear people's skulls as masks. That's not cool either. But it's well, who started it, right? Like, we were the slaves of Galadorn, but then we were freed. Yeah, but then you work for someone evil, but now you're doing this. So you have these children that are the cycles of violence. Kit and Eric are top of the list, from Blood of the Six, and then Jade, daughter of Kale, and then you've got Graydon and everything that happened with him, and he's called out for it here. But you also get a lot of, and Star Wars is going to continue to come up because it's a George thing. We always see George in the credits on this show. John Kasdan and his team and Hannah Friedman with this script and all these directors are doing things that I love to see, in terms of like rebirth, like taking away their ability to hide via a magical fruit. And then, they're all telling the truth, and Graydon shaves and Jade lets her hair out, and Willow is, he's getting pissed, like he says before it. He's like, I'm an insecure old man who's mediocre at best, and I never had adventures, and I'm afraid of telling people. And like, it's like the board resets emotionally. And even Borman, who's a liar, has his moment where she's like, I could keep you as my prisoner, and he says, I already am. It's like the most honest that he ever is. And it was just a really cool way to not stop the story, but it's like it was almost a flip. Like we gave you a villain fight at the front, and now we're going to give you all the build. And we took out, I was checking the notes on it just for those playing at home. We lost the two creatures known as the Scourge. Well, the Scourge and the Dag, it was the Lich and the Doom are destroyed. And the Scourge and the Dag are still around. And so we got our A plot, sub boss fight. And now it's just emotions, and then we'll talk about the cliffhanger. But where do you want to go in terms of the ideas of these characters? Because it is a party, so let's keep it loose. Let's just move me around to what jumps out.
Something I want to talk about is, because this is now noticeably for me continued from episode 4, and probably when I think about it, goes into the episodes prior. My favorite scenes are between Kit and Alora. I think they're so money together, which is obviously massive credit to Ruby and Ellie. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's just like they have that conversation now where like, I know you don't like me. And then but it's like the truth comes out still. And it's like, I think they are just the perfect challenge for each other. Especially because both of their goal is Eric, right? Like they're sort of united in that, in a way that nobody else in the group is. Nobody else has the same exact motive. Like, we know, like, Graydon didn't even really want to go, and then and now he's sort of like on Alora's path, and then Jade goes to protect Kit. Willow's there for Alora, and then what's it called? Borman is there for, we still don't really know.
Is it
nice mystery still cooking on that one?
Mad Mardigan loyalty? Is it the current? By the way, sorry, we need to call him by his full legal name now. It's Thraxus Relaxus Borman, which, my goodness, we'll
great dialogue.
We'll talk about
great
him.
Dialogue,
but to your point, the challenge, of the two of them, like, someone who on paper is, the sword swinging, as you pointed out, best Disney princess. I think a strong argument could be made for that already.
Complete goat.
And she's this magical bloodline. She's got all this stuff, but she's just insecure and is angry. And
that's something I love about, like, when you watch Ruby Cruz play this role, the way she flips out of nowhere between that, like, I'm the lead character, yo. Like, I'm the princess who can do all the cool stuff. The way she flips from that to, I'm a child who knows absolutely nothing about the world, and like becomes very small. And like, even in the scene with Jade at the end, like, she looks tiny, in trying to like navigate those feelings. And even with like the scene with Alora, when Alora really challenges her on like, what does Jade mean to you? And it must suck for Jade to be in love with you, and you're not able to love her back. And it's just like, because Kit goes from that, like, well, what do you know, Miss Muffins, to just so small. She has totally all the armor's ripped off.
she has the acting ability that people talk about with deserved reverence of like the original Superman film, of like, how did this handsome big guy Chris Reeves make anyone believe that he was not Superman? And it's all just like no eye contact. It's like the tiniest little things, and the stutter, and the well, you know, I'm her friend, and it's all these choices that break it. And later you get like the funny moment by the tree of like, you know, and I know you act mean, and I know you're this and that, and like when they're telling each other the truth that they've had the fruit. But even before that, you're right. Like when they're trapped, it's like we the viewer get a fun experience there and an emotional one, because we've seen that had the events of, you know, the plot not kicked off, she did get to a moment of admission.
Yeah.
You know,
But she was gonna bolt.
Yeah,
You know?
she was gonna run.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She jumped on top of Jade, gave her, as Irvin Kershner would call it, a big old smooch,
Right.
and then was gonna go do whatever.
Yeah.
And so now it's like when we're watching this scene, we're like, oh, well, we know we've seen confirmation, and Laura hasn't seen confirmation, and it's a fun ride to be on, and it's a fun thing for Ruby to get to play.
Yeah.
And I think that's universally relatable, and it's part of what makes this show special, is that, you know, the other shows that we cover here and other fantasy in general, even stuff we don't cover, like, you know, we always talk about Lord of the Rings and Ice of Fire, but, you know, I would imagine someone like, you know, the Witcher cast, the characters, or people from Outlander or things like that. Like, I don't think there's going to be like a lot of like relatable teens, you know, like in those worlds. You know, they're heightened and they're larger than life, and this gives people the same in that like Spider-Man gives us. You know.
Yeah, that reminds me of that sort of concept a little bit of House of the Dragon with the fourth episode, where you get this is what I'm allowed to do, and this is what you're not allowed to do. And like, and they're you know, Allison and Rhaenyra are young people, probably same-ish age as like Kit and these characters. I think they're about 20, right? And
yeah, with Willow, the movie was 20
Dragon,
years ago. It's like they've got to be like 1920. Yeah,
House of the Dragon, they're like playing around like 17 or something. But it's like, yeah, that same idea of, in other fantasy, it like we don't often see kids being kids, and like House of the Dragon is sort of unique in that episode, and sort of showing Rhaenyra's freedom to be whatever she wants, you know. Yeah, I think it's just a really cool part of Willow to allow them to be teenagers. Like it almost feels like in Harry Potter when Half-Blood Prince is like, we don't care about the Horcruxes. Let them figure out their love lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, and it's a very endearing aspect. And I think another point to just continue to throw as much praise on Ruby Cruz as possible. Late recast.
Crazy.
Maybe the most important late recast since Viggo Mortensen.
I think you're right about that. I mean, it's like, I can't imagine the show without her, because her choices are so specific. I mean, we already teased it, but like, you know, she gets to do. John Kasdan has not been subtle about his homaging, nor should he be. He's doing it in such a fun way. As Ken pointed out in the pilot, the horse bit is straight out of one of Ken's favorite films, Young Guns 2. And then here you had seen it before me. You texted me. You said there is a Kit scene, but it's not related to the romance, et cetera, et cetera. And the second that I saw the drinks, I was like, oh, we're doing Raiders now?
Yep.
Oh, it's so good. And I can't imagine that scene without her. I can't imagine that scene without her choices, without her, you know, the way she drinks, you know, the prop drink, slams them down. Like that's her, like, not challenged, getting to be the swaggy princess that she thinks she is.
Yeah, no, she's got that energy that I don't even know how to say it. I think on Twitter I described it as the it with the star emojis. She just got it. She's got again, like, she leans away to look cool, but then she goes nervous and she becomes
clams up.
so not cool, right? Like, and it's great, and I've loved it, and I've loved it watching not just this episode, especially the last episode when she like really realizes, oh, I have to tell her about the bush, don't I? Like, and it's like she just becomes like this new person. So yeah, epic.
Yeah.
Kit Tantalos is some dope shit going on.
She's special. She really is. She's special. And when you think about Jade and their relationship, you know, we started with it like right out of the gate confirmation, but there's a difference between, you know, the visual confirmation, which is a huge step, of course, to representation and something that we want to see a lot more of. But for in world, for them to have the, you know, I'm truly, you know, deeply holy, whatever the line is, in love with you,
which I think was a criticism with Andor.
Andor, yeah,
because it was put on there. We know they're a couple, but there was no real like, let's talk about really being a couple and like what it means, what it's doing to us. So I think it's amazing credit to this writing team and these actors to just portray such an honest young relationship, and for it to be a queer relationship is so, it's like I don't even know what the word is, because it just shouldn't be like, it shouldn't be like a special thing, like we should just have this casually. But it is because that's the way the industry has made it. But it's you know, it's one of those things where it's like about time in a big sort of Disney Plus property, you know.
Yeah, it's long overdue, and to see it happen with these two performers, and to see how it affects Jade, and how they don't do, whenever there's an opportunity for them to, I think, like sort of CW-ify it, like they take that away. So literally with magical fruit, like it's you get little touches. Like I love Kit approaching Jade after they've had their argument, and it's you know, I need to talk to you. And then she's like, I would really like to talk to you. Like, she immediately adjusts her approach, and that feels so human. If I have one tiny little like hiccup thing, it would just be that the truth plum compels her to say that she suspected Jade's origin. I think that's you know, it could be something that gets picked up later, but I'm just like, am I chalking that up to just she has theories about everything? Because she has said that before, that she has ideas about what her dad did and stuff. But
yeah, I think Kit is by nature sort of paranoid, like because of Madmartigan and all that, and like she came up with the story about Elora Danan, and that's it, and that's what she tells herself to sleep at night, you know. And I think it's not out of the question that she'd be like it. I think you're right. Like, I think it is one of those things where it's like, was it necessary? I don't know. Again, that all depends on if they bring it up later.
The completed piece, and it's like, you know, it could be, next time we see Sorsha, we get something on it, or is that just a matter of maybe the dialogue could have been more explicit? Like, maybe if it was, I always suspected that your tattoo meant something, or there was something up. I had a bad feeling about it, or I never.
Or the way maybe people like Valentine coveted her and like raised her and focused on her.
I always thought that was wrong. It's either something in the wings, or it's undercooked a little bit, but nothing to be upset about, because again, this show earns the ability to have some of that fun wiggle room.
And when Aaron and Ruby are bouncing off each other like that, you don't care.
They're just dynamite.
They're working. They're at work.
Erin Kellyman, not enough good can be said about her. She's been great across all three of the major things we've seen her in, all four with Green Knight. Just an incredible actress. She's so understated, and I think that her playing all of the emotions and the revelations of like finding out who you are, because that's such a big theme with all fantasy, and especially with young people, but particularly with this crew in this episode. Everyone's sort of getting confronted with the truth, and yeah, her scene with Scorpia, where Scorpia does the whole exposition, I thought was fantastic. And the two of them, or it's like when they're adversaries and they're fighting, you buy it, and the second you find out that they're siblings, you buy that too, and you're like, oh yeah, I see it now, I feel it now, I get, like, obviously there's like a physical resemblance, you know, they're cast and they have a similar look, they have a similar haircut, like the freckles, like it was right there. But it was just it was a natural change for Aaron's performance throughout that scene. I thought that all that was really effective, and sort of that idea hangs over everybody, because it's sort of what's happening with Graydon too. Throughout all this.
And he's got a really, he's on an interesting trajectory, because it is almost very surface level. I got a crush on this girl and I need her to notice me. But then it also has that added element of like, she also saw you in a way that you don't know she saw you in, you know.
Yes.
It's like, so it's like it's so, again, like teeny, but also with that perfect layer of fantasy sort of complication added to it. And I think that's like a cool pairing, because it's, you know, obviously Graydon and Kit were the arranged pair. We always knew that wasn't going to be a thing. And to now pair this kid who has this weird past with possession now twice, and is also, like, you know, kind of obsessed about the old magics and studying it. He reads the language, the writing on the wall in the pilot, and now to pair him with like the chosen one sorceress, right? I think that's a very so just kind of cool, like, archetype pairing.
I was talking about it with Adam Collins on the previous episode, who I got to get Adam's thoughts, as he's a lifelong Willow fan, on everything that they dropped. But and he will be back. We're gonna do a season wrap up and hang and everything, and we'll all talk together. But we were talking about sort of the connections to something like Rise of Skywalker, and, like, you know, how the Blood of the Six makes Bavmorda, Sorsha, Kit and Eric sort of like children of darkness, but how there's also this like contrast of Graydon's kind of a child of darkness. Like it's come for him, and maybe they thought they had it with whatever clearly brutal ritual they did on him. And for the podcast listeners, I'm making scar motions all over my chest and everything. But it's come for him again, and she's had light all around her since she was a baby.
Right.
And he's had the inverse, and so it's like in the opposite. And so to see that play off each other, I'm curious if this will be a classic love triangle, or if it'll be he'll realize that he doesn't need her approval and that he'll grow out of the crush, or if it really will be she realizes kind of what other people think, which is, nah, you and Eric were just having sex, it wasn't actually love, and that this guy actually does care. Who knows where they go with it? But their moments, I think, are like you said, it's he has so far the most surface, but with the most like interesting, like, you know, yes and to it, like it's the how do I talk to women, but or just anyone, it's, you know, universally relatable. I shouldn't gender it. How do I talk to anyone that I have a crush on? But then also when I think that I'm inherently wrong, like I think I think I'm bad, I think I'm dark, I think I'm whatever.
Because he also he doesn't just say, like, it isn't just how do I get Elora to notice me? It also has that layer of, is she also avoiding me? You know?
Is she afraid? And
there's that extra edge to it, you know.
And when, you know, how his father has treated him and how he sort of has felt useless and everything, that's why I love that he doesn't get his Elora, you know, romance arc resolved here, but what he does get is Willow under the influence of the truth plum saying, you're a good person, which I think was like not arc resolved, but that was a huge step before the chaos of the ending to have those two characters, the two magic, appreciators, which before the Truth Plums, Graydon even pointed out, like, oh, finally, you and I, some time alone. Like, he's like, this is not alone time. He's like,
yeah,
we're trapped.
yeah,
Was really, really cool. And I think that it's given Tony Revolori a lot of stuff, a lot of different layers to play.
yeah.
In terms of the comedy, and he's a good addition to a lot of the different arcs too. A lot of the relationships, him and Borman have some really funny stuff up top, and that just talking about the comedy of the show, the stuff about romance and intimacy and sex and nervousness and confidence and all of that, and the push and pull and the flirtations. Like, it's just a steamy episode,
It is, yeah. It was very charged.
Yes.
And I think again, like, just with the comedy beats, I love the Borman talking to Graydon, and he's like, and then like women will just say whatever you say, like they'll do nothing but love you, and then it like immediately cuts to Kit, and she's like, Borman, I'm gonna kill you if you're I was like, yes, well played. Always, that's a great setup, classic setup. So yeah, it was because I previously thought the last episode was the funniest, and now this is also the funniest, and it's like, are they just gonna keep bumping it up? Like, I'm really interested in how well they use comedy in this show.
Yeah, it's comedy through character. Everybody has a different sense of humor. Kit's is very, biting and sarcastic and roguish. Later, when she's like, trying to strike that deal, she's like, please, this is what we're trying to do. Just let us all go free. You can keep Borman. He sucks. Like, she immediately is like gonna trade him away.
Yeah.
The Willow's comedy stuff is great with the way that he sort of feels like it's the first time you get to see him relaxed
Yeah.
in a while, possibly since the movie. Like, to see him actively to just have a good time and laugh and Warwick. I mean, that's where Warwick shines, and he this is so focused on young people and so focused on romance that Willow doesn't have as much to do in this one, but we need to rotate them around. But for what he does have, especially the wand stuff, talking about him and Alora, that all plays so well, because it's like that the essence of that comedy is sort of like dad saying, no, you can't have the car. And like hiding the car keys, and then
she's saying, you're such a dad.
You're such a dad. Yeah, you're such a dad. And then like when he sees her like using the wand to stir her food, her soup, all that stuff really, really played for me, and I think did a lot to contextualize where we were, like story wise. Like, it was a good scene, their first scene about the wand, not just for enhancing their rapport, but also like, for the kids, the younger viewers, we got to let them know sort of where we are. And we established that she technically has completed now 2 of the 4 things, and we're about halfway through the season. So it was they do their like, hey, we're checking you off on progress in elegant ways with the 2 of them.
Yeah, something I really liked about Willow, again, because he does take a bit of a backseat. I think I really liked the obvious big, I'm a fraud, I didn't do anything. Like, obviously, I think it's one of those things of like, he believes it, but he's not telling you the truth. It's his truth, but it's not real. Like I don't like it's, he believes that, but he's wrong. And
it doesn't make you tell like gospel truth. It makes you not be able to lie, which are different things.
Yeah. It reminds, like, in the same way when Obi-Wan says, and this is nebulous, so it's like a little more to play with. But when Obi-Wan's like, when Maul asks Obi-Wan, like, is he the chosen one? He's like, yes. Like, that was not confirmation that he was the chosen one. Luke was the chosen one. That's just Obi-Wan believes that.
He came to think.
Right, yeah. Rightly or wrongly, Obi-Wan believes that. And it's sort of, I think, similar with what Willow is. Like, I don't think Willow is on a story level confirming to the audience that he didn't do anything, but it's like, it's perfectly within his sort of era of doubt. Obviously we still don't know about what was hinted at with loss of
the
his son and wife
in the village.
And yeah, and so it made really it was a nice way to like continue Willow development while not spending too much time on Willow. And then I also thought there was a small thing with that's a bad pun now. Small thing with Rule. And
boo.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I wasn't planning it. But he's like, okay, get in, let's go. And he's
I
like,
love
nah,
that.
man. He's like, I'm out. I'm out of the game. I gotta hang with my daughter. And
I loved that.
Yeah, and it's like that thing with Willow, like maybe he like did he not quite get that he's the old one yet, right? Like and just this idea that we could get the band back together not being the reality.
I love that.
It's like you actually have to lead these kids. You're the shepherd for the kids. It's like you're not that that Photoshop of the Millennium Falcon cockpit with the 4 heroes in it. Like it's not, that's not your journey, Willow. It isn't about just grabbing all your friends and from the old stuff and hitting one last time on the road,
Yeah, I think that is so well said, and it's a great example, and I love it on that level. I love it. I mean, I love it comedically. I think that Kevin Pollak, like slipping right back into that voice, and it's such a trying not to say small. It's such a it's a very insular. It's it's a uniquely.
That's why you're a better broadcaster.
Yeah. Day. But it's not like he has an arc, or it's like he's not like he's gonna. Like, you get the idea that this is the only time we'll see him, and that Frangine is somewhere else. And I think he's in the show, so it's like maybe they split them up, and we'll get like they decided to dole out the brownie action a little bit differently. But I like your angle on it, because I think that's correct. Of it's not a band back together thing. Mad Mardigan has been gone. Sorsha has the duties of ruling, and like even the brownies, he's like, no, I'm gonna spend time with my daughter. There's also like a throwaway line that like Frangine might have gotten a divorce and gotten with Rule before they
or it was like his wife left him for him, right? Like, was that the joke?
I thought the joke was that Frangine's, I have to rewatch it, but I think
same.
Rule saying Frangine's wife left him because he wanted me or something like that.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the wife left Frangine for Rule.
Maybe. Okay, we gotta rewatch that.
Know, yeah.
But it was very funny.
It's a good beat.
But you're right. So it's you can't have things the way they were, but also Rule, as wacky and zany as he is at peace. And it's like the reasons why you can't get the band back together are different. For Razel is dead, and we said Mads and Sorsha can't be there, but for Willow, it's easy to be like, open up the bag and be like, come on, hop in, let's do the adventure again. And as Rule reenacts the entire movie, like we fight, ha, who, ride, happy kissy ending, like all of that. But it's easy for Willow to say that because he still has something to prove. He's not at peace. And he's and that's what I love about when we revisit a legacy character. I'm sorry to everybody that is like, this is like in Maverick. I still haven't seen it, but Nikki saw it. And the impression I get from the scenes I've seen just on Instagram or trailers is that's a man who's not at peace. Han Solo came back in TFA. That's a man who's not at peace. Leia's not at peace. Luke is the furthest thing from being at peace. Like, it's never a band back together. It's a closure. What is left to tie up. And the hero that has something tied up is not gonna go, because it's like I have my kid and my house, and I love you, and I was so happy to see you. And he helps him. He gives him a little leaf. I was unclear on what the leaf did. I feel like
unfortunately I would not be able to break it down. I think I was like, my brain was still with like Kit and Alora when that happened.
Understandably,
because they were playing with the wand. So it's like, that's something I'm gonna have to revisit to get the details on.
Yeah, he had
But
given
yeah.
him some like advice on how to break out, and there's some funny jokes and stuff about using greatness and distraction. But yeah, even Rule, like, it's always the classic George thing, and harkens back to Tolkien and just classic myths of the smallness, going all the way back to David. But the idea of, yeah, it's like, it has to be you, and what you said about, you combine that insecurity that Willow expresses with the fact that he is still got the chip on his shoulder, and that's sort of what it's a chip on his shoulder combined with duty, as Nims points out, like, Dad, this is how you protect the baby that you've been, it's like 20 years ago you protected the baby, you still have to do it.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of something that Ron Bergman said in The Director and the Jedi. Like, it's been documented and litigated in public that Mark Hamill struggled a little bit with Luke's arc and came around later. I want to
It's an
emphasize,
important piece of it.
it's a key element that he has
Yeah.
literally said he loves the movie and thinks it's great and understands it now. But in that documentary, during shooting, there's a moment where Ron Bergman says, I think Mark is coming to terms with the fact that he's not Luke in this one, he's Obi. And Willow, in a metatextual way, is realizing that he's Obi. He's not calling on Willow allies. He is the master, and they're making allies.
Yeah.
It's Borman's friend Scorpia that becomes part of the adventure. It's Borman's other friend Allagash that is alluded to. It's
Lori.
Lori. Yeah, Lori's a great joke. It's
Yeah.
Jade that finds her sibling. It's like,
Yeah.
stuff's happening with the next generation. And you're an institution now. That's why it's cool for Graydon to be like, but I read about everything that you did, and Willow to be like, no, it was just dumb luck. Like, it wasn't like that at all. It's a great moment.
Quick note on Lori.
Yes.
He has a very small role in Ted Lasso, in the episode that I have described to you as the Green Knight.
Ted Lasso. Yes. Oh, that's awesome.
And he again, because that episode is very Green Knight. It's very like Odyssey, like encounter of the hour type thing.
Right.
And he just plays this like really small role, and it was just funny to see him again. And I was like, my man in a second fantasy role.
His name is Charlie Rawls. That says, as Laurie Toth, a bone reaver who is insecure about his first name. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
He's a great little like cameo actor. Some people, again, it's like positions in sports, right? Where it's like, it's not this guy's job to do this, but the job he can do, bang on it.
Nails it.
Yeah.
Nails it. I mean, that's like with Jonas, like Jonas Swatomo, our beloved, second generation Chewbacca, taking over for the legend Peter Mayhew, and now here he is in another role, like getting to be the Scourge. Like, it's like, is the Scourge like emoting or like acting? It's like, no, but like, we know that Jonas, you understand the physicality, you understand the costume acting, you understand the presence, and it's just like, just go and have this great scene. And this show employs those people really well. Same like it did with Ballantyne. Same like it did with the gentleman who played Corrin Halfhand. I'm blanking on his name, but it's like, we just place these guys where they need to be placed, and it all sings really well. Finishing up just talking about Allura, I think the wand stuff is great, and seeing her come more into her element here. We established that she's already done certain things, and she's already having she's moving into the next step and talking about divination, and she's putting together, she brings up the question in the previous episode about what went down with Willow, that she's not being truthful. She asked him here, have you ever had a vision, or have you ever divinated? And then he's like, yeah, I've had visions sometimes. And then it's like, am I in them? And then that's like, well, she's starting to become more aware. The visual representation of her red hair coming back is wonderful and very mythic. And then the wand.
Yeah, and something I was thinking about in terms of the Graydon relationship is like, we see him go from this like quiet, self-serious kid and moving towards this lighthearted, oh, I'm gonna wear a bandana now, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
shave, and it's like he's going that way while she's going from that more like ditzy energy into this sort of more stable level, just the way she talked to Kit and then the way she talked to Graydon at the end, where she's like, well, figure it out, let me know, kind of thing. And like just she's starting to become a stable presence for these people. And I think that's like obviously key to her character, as she is now going to, obviously the quest is going to go deeper and deeper, and the challenges are going to get worse and worse, and she's going to get stronger and stronger. And it just, I think it's going to make this incredible arc. I mean, whenever the season's done and the series is done, even if if there's more seasons, I think it's going to be a really stunning thing to look where she is by the end, and then watch the pilot again. Like it's gonna be so fun to see that.
Absolutely. I mean, even in the sort of functional elements of the storytelling, like ability to spell cast, and how it took her forever, to do the growth charm and to make that bush happen, but it only took her a couple tries to get the wand to fire a huge blast. Like she's sort of like remembering like literal things, like her actual memorization of language is getting better, her pronunciations are getting better. It's like it's on every level, thematic and literal, and just the way that she I think that the way that she plugs into the party and sort of becomes party host, and cook, and people rally around her and everything, and she's got that really cool like her hairstyle, and it's like this beautiful like updo that she's got and everything, like it's sort of like, to me, was a nice there's emotional connectivity to Hubert and Anne. Like the last time I met a people that I didn't understand, like I was hesitant, I was afraid, and I was being chased, and like it ended up being a violent moment. But now here I get to be a Laura Dannon in peace, which was a different thing, at least until the ending. So
you have to remind me now, do the Bone Reavers know she's a Laura?
I don't know if
does that mean anything to them?
I don't know if they know or care. I don't think it comes up at all.
I know Lori makes a comment on the food, and I don't remember if he like calls her by her name, or he just like,
he might have.
But it again, it's one of those things. It's a key part of the world. It's like, oh, you're a Laura Dannon? What?
Yeah.
It's like, let me see the lightning bolt scar, right? Like it's very much in that same.
And people exist as Reavers in the Woods because of the battle fought over her.
Exactly. So it's like, you'd think if the knowledge of her being a Laura Dannon is like known to them, it would be a big deal. But it's never made a big deal. Maybe because they're all focused on Jade.
Yeah, which I think is part of it, and we're also not sure like if these are going to be recurring characters, because now we have a chase and everything, and we'll talk about that ending. But we've talked about Willow, we talked about Kit, we talked about Jade, we talked about Graydon, we talked about Scorpio a little bit. We got to talk about the big man. this guy Borman. Like we talked about it off air because we were just so in love with the comedy beat. His Graydon comedy is great. His, it's YouTube, it's a podcast, we were a family show. I hate to be saying the word sex as much as, even though sex is not a shameful thing, but like, it's in Rings of Power, it's not coming up, but for him to make jokes about like being tied up and everything, like these are more adult jokes than Lucasfilm usually gets to do, because Star Wars is Star Wars, and it doesn't get to do earthy humor. But
you don't get Veil of Boobs in Star Wars.
You don't get Veil of Boobs. No. You don't get, bring him to my tent, tie him up, and I don't know. Kind of sounds like we were on the same page, like that type of stuff.
Big fan of her muffins.
Big fan of her muffins. But the story of like, how did you escape? I forget the name of the place, but it's where the trolls.
Skellen, I think. Was that it?
Skellen, I think. Yeah, you're right. How'd you escape Skellen? And it's mines. Yeah, that's right, because Jade jumps in and explains it to Laura. And he's like, I had to fight, and it was this and that, and it was bloody, and it just makes it sound like the most epic thing. Meanwhile, he's hiding in a barrel full of sludge.
Yeah.
Like the intercutting.
Yeah, just like
Brilliant.
technically on a script level to
Mhm.
intercut with voiceover and just cut it all, like, pull the rug from underneath it all. It's just genius. It's just great comedy scripting for this world and for the character. And it's I think again it's his mini arc with her in this episode. It's obviously again the truth plums force people into positions, but they're still true. And it's like to be that guy who's kind of just like lying his way through where he got to then being as vulnerable and honest as we've ever seen him with her, I think is really powerful. And again, it's just like we keep saying, like, it's a credit to like writing team and Hannah Friedman for this particular episode, where it's like to be able to mix comedy with the like comedy is the ingredient for the arc. I think is they do a really good job with all the characters on that front, but it's it was really clear with Borman in this episode.
Yeah, you get the idea of like this is some of the stuff that he does care about, that he has been burying. Like you give us all the comedy, and then you confront us with what he's using comedy to deflect, and it's her, and it's their past, and there is a little bit of the serialized storytelling, world building. Scorpio is once again a character that says, "And what about Mad Mardigan?" And then we cut, and and we don't actually. He like pauses, and then we're on to the next scene, and you get the idea that there was some relationship between Thraxus Relaxus Borman, Scorpia, this guy Allagash, who we just know from casting as Christian Slater, and Mad Mardigan at a time. Like something went down. They all know each other. What is that relationship like? What is there's an interesting tension, I think, for the viewers, like the viewer being in sort of the quote God chair of knowing all the details.
Right.
He is in this romance with the leader of the Bone Reavers, the daughter of Kale, but was the squire for the man that killed Kale, her father.
Yeah.
So he, like, what is that? Like, I'm like, Lucasfilm, you got a relationship with Del Rey. Give me the Thraxus Borman squire novel, like an egg style, Mad Mardigan and Thraxus, like something like that would be so fun.
I love the points about these generations intertwining, because it serves as a foil to another staple of this show, and by this show I mean Casterly Talk, House of the Dragon, and the way generations have passed beef and past hatred. And that's why the Dance of Dragons is the bloody mess, the bloody, crispy, fiery mess that it becomes, because of the way the sins of the father and the mother become the sins of the children.
Yeah.
And Willow is really the opposite of that. And it's like all these descendants are unifying and kissing each other, right? Like
we're making out, we're slow dancing. They legit bring it to a prom style slow dance. Like,
and it's just like, again, it's just a really great sort of like foil to think about these two trajectories of dealing with generations.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I love that. I hadn't thought about it in those terms. It's not generational. I mean, it is generational fallout, but it's not an inherited rift. It's a self-aware, as the show is, realization of, oh, our parents were screwing up. Well, that's not good, and once Scorpia realizes that this is her little sister, which, by the way, I forgot to comment on the beautiful dialogue of, like, it's a classic thing in stories, be like, well, if you are who you say you are, tell me something only I would know, or we would know about each other. And she's like, you used to count the stars when you were a little girl and all that stuff. And you could just see it in her eyes, like, yeah, you're my sister. But once that all plays, it's like, well, why can't the Nelwyn and the brownies and the Bone Reavers and the Tirasleen princess and the like, why can't that all be one? And it comes from a pure place, which I think is great because we started from arranged marriage and a forced placed, and we started from, you know, we have a barrier and we're gonna unify these kingdoms. We're gonna do it for political reasons, but here it's like our stock were slaves, and yeah, they made a devil's bargain, but it was to be free, and so that's immediately gray. And once we've acknowledged that there's gray in our generations, I mean, Eric is named after Eric, who was, not saying Eric was a slaver. We don't know what the politics of Galadorn was, but comes from that place.
Yeah. Just the lack of, they are not the heroes.
Yeah.
You thought they were. They're still the heroes of Willow, but they're not the heroes that you thought they were.
Exactly. Societally. And
right.
I think it's very modern and self-aware and smart of Kasdan and his entire crew to say, young kids in 2022 or young people in 2022, anyone in our age or younger, the delightful Gen Zers posting Zoolander clips on TikTok, like like we are the generation that is like, oh, you guys screwed up and we're not going to do that anymore. Like we want to do things differently, and to put that in fantasy is usually hard, you know, because of long-lived people, because of like that ain't happening in Rings of Power, because the people that messed up are still the leads because they ain't aging, you know, like they're living thousands of years. So to have a story that's just 20 years of change and people saying, I want to choose love, I want to choose fun, and for Kit, I think Kit sort of sums it up with the, and I want you to know that when the adventure's over, like I would come live here with you. I think was a really beautiful thing. Like the princess of Tirasleen is saying, I will go live with the Bone Reavers.
Yeah, which is also like that's payoff for Kit in the pilot, who wants nothing more than to go beyond, right? Like, so it's almost like that moment of it, like again, like we're gonna talk about the end, but it's like for Kit, probably in that moment, almost all of her life problems were like conforming into, oh, this is the solution.
This is the solution.
I can be with her.
Don't
I'm out
run.
of the palace. Yeah, like all these things she wanted are coming together.
You will get freedom, but not through avoidance. It's through leaning in.
Yeah,
like you can have the it's Luke Skywalker. Like he wanted to leave that farm, and he could have just enlisted, you know, or run away from home or done anything like what you had planned to do, you know, stick around for one more season, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
but he does get to see the greater galaxy. It's just that way, and it's not this way. And I think that all these characters are having that. I feel like we've talked about everybody in the core crew. So just in terms of action moments, directorial moments before we get into the ending, is there anything else that you wanted to shout out before we get really mad at one specific troll?
I think I just want to always shout out for the rest of my life the drinking competition. Like, I think it was so great. Ruby as Kit killed it. Like just the expressions, the mannerisms, the body language, her scene partner.
He's great.
Guy. We don't know who he is, but just playing it off. Very similar. Again, it's the Marion vibes, obviously. Similarly in how the guy she's drinking with, we don't know who he is, but he played it brilliantly. And I think about that scene a lot now. It's my happy place. And then I think as far as sort of directorial choices, I think they did a good job in that sequence of the drinking competition of, I think, showing the levity. Like there's that part where like Alora's hands are like, woo! And Jade, I think, is just sort of like in the middle and looking around and like, oh my God, they're all like swirling around me. And it's like, I think it's an important piece of every story we know, and we know the beat of the ending of this episode is big, but it's you need that like sort of stop and smell the roses moment in a quest, right? And like we just had Nockmar, we just had Valentine's, you know, possession thing and death, and then we had the Gales fight, and now it's like this really was a chance to take a breather, but also like not take a breather. It's like we're still dealing with stuff, but I think that was just kind of a cool. I like the sort of choices made creatively in that little sequence of like, what if we just were here? What if this was life? It's almost like you know, let's never leave this cave. You know, it's like that thing.
Cry now,
right? Yeah. It's that thing of like, what if this was it, and what if we were just kind of happy doing this?
What if we just had each other and it's a little bit. Yeah, I was gonna say it's like Rivendell, which is something that I brought up before of like, well, we did it, and it's like, well, emotional catharsis for some of you doesn't mean that there's not still things to unlock, but also like you said, like, you know, the Jon Snow illusion of like that's peace, but it's also like the quest isn't done, and that's the burden of the hero. And now it's like I want nothing more than, and you know, homage your dad one more time, John Kasdan, and give me the Ewok celebration, but with the Bone Reapers. Like, let that be the season finale. I don't know what it'll do, but I love that. And yeah, let's talk about that final moment. It's a beautiful admission of love. The chemistry between everybody, and the chemistry between our core couples here of Borman and Scorpio, but this, you know, Jade and Kit being our couple throughout. It's so beautiful and poetic, and it's the thumbnail for this episode, and it's a shot that was in the trailers, and to have context for it, they're both playing it so beautifully. Like you said, it's the small Kit, but like the build toward happiness, the build toward realization, and
I love her line where she's like, I would be very into that.
I would be very into that. Yeah. The modern dialogue is so well placed for me. I know it's you know, mileage may vary for viewers.
Yeah.
But I like that not every fantasy is thous and thys, and
exactly,
you know, there could be a nice mix. I don't know about you, and I want to hear about your experience. When she says, "I'm going to kiss you in 10 seconds," and it's that build, I had Willow's about to pop up. Like, I thought we were about to get a comedy beat. Like, for me, it felt like, or Willow's about to have a vision, or we're gonna, like, I knew.
You knew they weren't gonna.
I knew it could not be.
Yeah.
I knew lips would not meet. But I did not, and I should have, because they brought them up a bunch of times throughout the episode. I did not think it would be a troll attack.
Yeah.
And I did jump. I totally jumped.
Yeah.
When it happened.
I don't remember if I did or not, but I wasn't expecting it. I think I was ready for them to do the old smooch. Yeah. And again, it's like, thinking back on it, I think it's now very clever season-wide plotting, in that they gave us the kiss, they front-loaded a kiss.
Yeah.
And I think had they not done that and then done this whole thing, I think we'd be screaming. Yeah, we'd be screaming at our screens. Like, nah! So it's very smart. I think they bought themselves the room to play that beat perfectly. And yeah, I think it, as we were talking before, like, they're just so in the moment, and they're just, as actors, as characters, it's so believable. And it's like, in the way, I think it's like sort of zooming in on them, like everything just feels like emotionally all just coming together. And then yeah, that troll came out of nowhere, and they're creepy.
Yeah. I like that. I like when fantasy things take a swing in terms of how they depict something that is just like a staple. Like, every fantasy lore ever that I'm aware of has a troll. But I like that Willow was like, ours are furry, and they are kind of shaped like men, but they jump around and they swing, and they have like kind of like tendrily looking, like, it's weird. Like, I like that theirs have like completely different rules. It's not a classic cave troll. It's not a little gnomey troll. It's just an unsettling, like, primate sort of weirdo.
And speaking of action beat highlights, the Borman kill on the troll is like top tier, awesome.
Yeah.
It reminded me so much of Two Towers Legolas when he's just like a scout.
Yes.
And it's like, oh man, that's a great way to just sort of the way close that episode out, which when we don't get a song.
Yes.
I think maybe that's a choice because there's so much music throughout it. Like we start
putting
with the song.
Putting the song at the top is like the flip.
Yeah. And I think there's a song in the middle somewhere.
There's a slow dance song.
Yeah. And so I think obviously a good choice to let that one sit. But it was a great sort of like actiony, oh shit ending.
It's a great beat too. And Borman, much like Mad Mardigan before him and Han Solo before him and everyone in that archetype, you can have bumbling characters that are hiding the fact that they're not actually great. Someone like Gilderoy Lockhart comes to mind, like true blowhards. But then the people that are bumbling liars but still back it up, and like that's something that I think always got me about Han is like, he is like running and screaming down the hallway in New Hope, but like he will win. Like Han Solo is still a G when push comes to shove, and Borman has that energy too, much like Mad Mardigan. Like little Willow when he's young Warwick Davis, you really are great. Like yeah, he is. And so for Borman to be like, slow dance over, I'm slaying trolls. I feel like this next one is great.
He was his squire for a reason.
He was a squire for a reason. And I want to give a shout out to, is it John Bickerstaff? I want to say his name is.
On the writing team?
On the writing team, yeah. Sorry, I'm double checking that now. We're learning lots of new names in the process of this show. Yes, John Bickerstaff. He had a great tweet that said, Wildwood rocks, brought to the page by writer and co-EP Hannah Friedman. If you're pressed and distressed over the ending, I'll just say this. It wouldn't be a good love story if you didn't have to rescue the princess. And I was like, I love you guys. I love this team.
And it's brilliant fantasy beats, universal fantasy beats. But what makes them special is how every time, or every great time, is how they feel so authentic to their own thing, and not just like a regurgitation of a beat, and I think like that's the thing. It's like you watch it and you're like, oh my gosh, and until you have a writer point it out word for word like that, it's like, oh, of course. Right? Of course, that's the world we're in.
It's like we're going to a troll cave to save a princess from the literal quote good kingdom. Like like it's so right there, but it's all about the delivery mechanism. That's what like Willow to me has, and we've referenced so many things in the show because it is such a self-aware thing, and it is very much of 2022. But so one thing we haven't brought up, Willow has Marvel energy, and I think Adam Collins brought that up last time a little bit with the humor. But like you look at something like Guardians of the Galaxy, like team of space characters on ship have adventure is as old as we've been telling popular fiction. Right. Like that goes all the way back to John Carter, Mars, and like all those old novels and everything. But it was the delivery mechanism. James Gunn was like, yes, but also what if a-holes? And now it's like Willow is like, yeah, what if all those things you knew
with the soundtrack?
With the soundtrack, and Willow is saying that too. What if with a soundtrack, and what if it was queer, and what if it was sort of like a storybook but also very modern, and what if I threw words like boobs in there and things like fart jokes and sex jokes and like
characters called Mad Mardigan. It's like,
which like is it we'll talk about that at some point. Well, I think when we do season wrap up, we'll talk about some specific things, especially because we will get Mad Mardigan payoff. Nikki and I were having a conversation off air. Leave in the comments below what you think. Is Tantalos Bavmorda and Sorsha's last name, or is it Mad Mardigan's last name? Because Mad Mardigan Tantalos might take the cake for the most over-the-top name I've ever heard in my life.
That's a lot of syllables.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
His passport must be cool. It's like cut off.
Yeah, 100%. I think that about does it for this one. It was a contained story with lots of like moving us to the next plateau emotionally, and I feel like
Yeah.
it was a lot of breakthroughs. But I think we got it all in terms of everything, and I'm it's times like this where I get selfish and I'm like, oh, I wish I had the binge, but then I'm like, no, I love this.
Yeah.
Let it stretch.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts on your end before we close out?
Yeah, I mean, just I thought this was such an awesome episode. So much great humor, everything we talked about. I now sit here jealous, envious of whoever you bring on next week, because it just seems like this next episode is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's troll fighting, it's Save the Princess, it's all that great stuff. So I'm excited to have another blast with Willow next week. And outside of that, drink water, stay in Ruby Cruise.
Yeah.
You're good. You're good.
Do good things.
Yeah.
And tell everybody where they can find you on all the social media platforms. Whether or not they survive is up in the air, but
yeah, we'll stick with Old Faithful. You can find me on Twitter at Nequicious, Naquicious, and you can listen to the One and Done Film Club, which is a blockbuster franchise exploration that I do with Alden here and our friend Reed. You can find that in podcast, Spotify, and also on Twitter at Done Show. You can find the Imperial Senate podcast on podcasts and YouTube, Twitter at Imp Senate Pod. And you can also find a rewatch Between Worlds, which is on Alden's home channel.
Yes, yeah. Rewatch Between Worlds is a Rebels show. It's going to be coming back soon now that Andor's over. I was such an idiot. I was like, oh, when Andor's over, we'll do it. And then like Bad Batch was like, nope, here I come. But we'll figure it out. But yeah, Octa Radio is where I do all my stuff. And you can find me personally at that Alden Diaz, Twitter, Instagram, Hive, TikTok. With 4 platforms, there's no way I'm going to be consistent. Twitter is Old Faithful. But that's that Alden Diaz, ThatAldenDiaz. Also, hopefully doing some more stuff with StarTrek.com soon here with Ken when we do live shows, and we're going to be continuing our Rings coverage. We're going to be continuing our Ice and Fire coverage as the rewatch returns soon. We've teased it before, but when Ken gets the rewatch started, we're starting with Mountain and the Viper. So that's fun. That's where he left off. Casterly Talk is everywhere. You can see if you're watching on YouTube, the handle is up there. You can support us. There's a QR code that way.
There you go. Yep.
Boom, almost nailed it. Yeah, bottom right corner of the screen. If you're on podcast, you can scroll up to the descriptions. Of course, there's a way to support us on PayPal. But just listening, telling your friends, leaving stars, leave reviews, really appreciate it. All of Ken's socials are there in the bottom. Ken's going to be back at least for the Willow finale and wrap up. Who knows, maybe beforehand. It was a well-deserved time off. And then, we're going to have some more guests coming up soon. People that I'm excited about. Schedules are a little bit amorphous, but some really fun friends are going to be joining us to wrap up Willow. And if you are excited about Willow, please just tell people, let people know what's going on with this great show. But for right now, we've got a princess to save and we've got trolls to kill. And we're going to be following Aaron Kellyman with a vengeance straight into the troll cave. And we will catch you next time right here on Casterly Talk.